Welcome, everyone. This is Nicki Keohohou, CEO and co-founder of the Direct Selling World Alliance. I am so excited to share with you one of the newest team members to the DSWA, Mr. Angelo Rossi. And I've known Angie for a number of years and have had the opportunity to work with him, learn from him, and to share ideas and experiences together. So I want to give you a little bit of background on Angie before we begin our webinar today, which is our Executive Forum program with being an executive leader of leaders. So Angie is experienced in direct sales, and he's an senior executive with over 30 years of experience with one of the world's largest North American and global direct selling companies. He is a highly skilled leader with expertise in direct selling talent development, with dynamic team building, strategic change leadership, and organizational effectiveness. Angie's various senior management roles with, with him have helped establish a broad base of experiences and perspectives. He led the U.S. sales organization to record sales levels and also led the implementation of the direct selling model in China. He served in lead regional sales support roles in Asia Pacific, Western Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and as Group VP of Global Sales. Angie was responsible for the direct.
Nikki, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I appreciate all of those words. And I also thank everyone who has joined in on this executive forum. I hope you find the information that Nikki and I are going to be stepping through over the next half hour or so very informational. And more importantly, I hope you gain a few nuggets of information that can help you in your business. And also, as you hear the conversation and discussion that Nikki and I get into, I think you'll see some ways that DSWA can also help you and your business. So, Nikki, I'm excited about this and all the other forums we're going to get into over time. And again, thank you for that kind introduction.
Hmm, very welcome, Angie. And I know everyone that is listening to this forum will want to get out your paper, pencil, and you're also going to want to know how to connect with Angelo. And at the end of this call, we'll be sharing that too. So, to begin our webinar, we start off with visionary leadership. You know, in our elite leadership program, we teach about visionary planning and, you know, how to have a vision and a plan to implement that vision. Well, visionary leadership, we all know, is critical in this profession for that whole executive team and the field to be on the same page. But I want to ask you, Angie, what does visionary leadership look like?
Well, Nikki, as leaders, one of the things that I don't want folks to get hung up on, there are very few. It's rare that people are identified as visionary leaders. And, you go down the list of the Steve Jobs and the Wright brothers and Einstein. There's a whole lot of difference between what those folks accomplished in their careers and the concept of visionary leadership. Obviously, they had it. But this business of being a visionary leader is really something that all of us as leaders, in my opinion, can do. And basically, to me, it's creating and sustaining a vision for your organization. There has to be a passion about it and also some long term goal setting. Nikki, it may sound very, very simple, but the question I think everyone has to ask themselves is, what's my vision for my company? Equally as important, once you establish that vision, the long term goals, how are you going to inspire your team to reach those goals becomes very, very important. How are you going to communicate your vision to your people? And of course, when you talk about visionary leadership, you really have to start talking about how we act as leaders as we execute against our vision. How open are we with our people? How imaginative are we when we start talking about the things that are important to our business plan? Equally as important, do I stick to my vision when things get tough? Am I persistent? Am I convicted in the way we're going to go about getting things done? So, for how we looked at our business, those are some of the things, Nikki, that I think of right away when I talk about visionary leadership. And then to build on that, ongoing. How do you challenge yourself as a leader on a daily basis? You have to ask that question of yourself every day. Am I sticking to my vision? Am I consistent with it? And how do I put up guardrails so that I don't fall away from my vision the minute things get tough? A bad set of results come in, or a difficult challenge in the human resources field. How am I going to stick to my vision? How am I going to execute against it? And to me, Nikki, that is a daily part of getting, just like getting results. It's part of how you challenge yourself to be a visionary leader.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
it totally does. And to add to that, it's not just you as the leader having the vision. You've got to be able to engage your entire team and the sales force in that vision, and then to be able to continually cast that vision back out to the people. Because especially in difficult times, as you said, people can lose sight of the vision, and it becomes about, the stress and the money and all the rest of it. If you hold on to the vision and walk into your vision, your culture works with that vision.
You
So,
know, you
and I've seen
mentioned
you
a
do
couple
that.
of, yeah, couple
Mm.
of key words there, Nikki. Culture and vision. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but you also said something I think it's important as leaders. You referenced to the sales organization. Certainly, we're talking to a lot of folks, or a lot of folks are listening in who are sales leaders. But you know as well as I do that we talk about executives across an entire business and senior management folks, even outside of the sales organization. Sometimes it's even more difficult when you have to think about the marketing group, the sales group, the finance group, and all the other folks who are under your leadership. They are looking to you to stick to that vision first as you create it and communicate it, but it's very important. You mentioned that sales organization, how very important it is, especially in an absentee management situation in most parts in our business, how you continue to emphasize that vision. But to the in-house folks also, it's important that you are living that every day, both verbally and non-verbally, in the way you are acting.
So, Angie, let's move on to establish your priorities as a leader. We all know that you got to kind of stick to them even in the tough times. How do you do that when the going gets tough?
Nikki, it is a great question, and it's one that leaders in every business deal with on almost a daily basis. I mentioned the guardrails in my previous comment when we were talking about the vision you establish. And I would also say that those guardrails become important as you consistently execute your priorities. What's most important to you as a leader within your vision? Is it profit? Is it your people? Is it your shareholders? I know they're all very important, but prioritizing them will give you that guide map, if you will, to how you're going to frame your decisions and how you're going to lead by the examples that you want to set. Don't keep those priorities to yourself, though. That's a very strong piece of advice that I would give. A lot of times, leaders, because they have to change their priority given the environment, given some competitive issues that have cropped up, they may change on a daily or monthly basis. Staying within the guardrails of your vision, but then letting your team know, hey, look, gang, we had to be focused on this because we needed to grow staff. But now I'm using it as an example. But we've grown staff so well, boy, we really have to get over to average customer size. We have to build those orders and make sure that along with staff and activity, we're having a little bit of average order in there also. That's just a small example of how your priorities as a leader may change. Doesn't mean your vision has changed, but it really does mean that you understand what your business needs at this time, you execute against those needs, and you reestablish priorities, and not reestablish, but reorder them, if you will, Nikki, if that makes sense.
It's interesting about that because I know sometimes we establish our priorities and then, the fireworks start and we have to move over here. And then there's another fire and we move over there and we have another fire and we move over there. So we're kind of like always putting out fires when in reality, if we stayed with our priorities, even if a fire occurred, we go right back to our priorities and establishing and staying with it. When you have
Absolutely.
people, go ahead.
No, absolutely. And one of the things when you're in the middle of those fires, I'm chuckling as you say that because everyone listening to this call has been in the middle of one of those fires. Your people are looking at you all the time, and how you as a leader are reacting to the fires, maintaining your vision, staying consistent with your priorities, communicating when you have to change. That's what part of being a leader is all about. It's a major part to me because life is not always going to be without fire. There are fires to put out almost every day. How you as a leader handles it, how your people see you handling it is very important.
And that's sticking to them even in the tough times, even with the fireworks, and keep on keeping on. And I know, Angie, you were very good at that.
Well, thank you, but it does lead to this next. This slide comes up. Live your values and your culture. In our business, Nikki, as you know, you've dealt with so many of the businesses in the direct selling world in this country and around the world. Everybody has a culture that they build. They are as different as night and day in many regards, but they are all very important to the value chain, the value system that the owners, the founders, how they created it. As a leader, you have to challenge yourself to understand what are your values as a company. I don't know of any company that goes into business from startup to execution to growth that hasn't established a very strong foundation of values that they are going to live by. That's important. And you know what? You and I both know that there are companies in our business that sometimes lose their sense of values, what their values are. That's those guardrails, another important aspect of it that I referenced earlier. And we've watched too many companies go into disarray because they lost sight of their values and what got them where they are. So that's a challenge that I would give to all leaders listening in right now. Never forget your values that you as a leader probably helped create or that you inherited from the original owners of the company. And to me, that's most important. Your values help then create your culture. It's very hard to change and not impact your business in a tangible manner. It sounds simple to live your values and your culture, but when you walk into a different company from one that you were in before, you better understand what the culture is there. And most important, the first question I always ask someone, so what are your values here? What's your culture like? Because that really helps you establish then what track you're going to take as a leader of that organization.
Very good points, Angie. And as I think about that, I just had a new company. I had a conversation with the executive with that company, and he said, we're just not quite sure what kind of culture we want to develop. And again, I said, so if you're not sure, your field will create it, and you may not like it. So that's something to invest some time on early on, is making sure you're clear. And how do you maintain that again through difficult times? I see some companies slip away from their values over years. They can deteriorate and they can lose sight of what they were there for in the first place and who were they serving. And it becomes about the KPIs. It becomes about the inventory control. It comes up about all those things versus being about the people. And that's what's important.
Bingo. Bingo. And I say a loud amen to that because it's not that those other things are not important. Because whether you're a privately held company or a publicly held company, making your numbers is very important to the ultimate longevity of your business and sustainability of your business model. But I think to your point, sometimes people forget one of the most, if not the most important component to that equation, and that is your people. And your people are the first ones to know when you, as the leader, get outside those guardrails and you start to change the values of the company that's so near and dear to them and is really their source of income in many cases in our business and the culture of that business. It's almost tragic to watch the number of companies that have done this, have lost sight of their values, what got them there, if you will, and the culture that's established and what it's meant to the downturn of their business. Nikki, you mentioned the leader who said, I really don't know the kind of culture we want to establish. That's a dangerous sign for a new business because, to your point, that's one of the going in propositions once you've established your vision you as a leader are creating that culture. And it's easy to communicate values and use the words, but living them really is what translates into the culture that that business has.
That's the important part. That's living your values and your culture even when people aren't looking. Because for them to trust, this is my company, this is what I love about my company, this is who my company is, this is what we stand for. People come to these businesses because one, they like the products and they think the products are great for some people. For others, they come because they like what the community stands for, that feeling that is attached to your company. So we are very much behind living your values and creating a culture that you can live. Anything else to add to that, Angie?
Yeah, Nikki, just to emphasize your point to the folks listening in, as you're listening into this forum and you're writing down ideas, these are not the hard business, one plus one equals two kind of things. This is not how do you control your inventory and improve your margins by X%. What this is about leading. What this is about the subsets of leading as you and I see them and things that we as leaders have a tendency to forget sometimes. So your last comments about people, about the vision and all this, and what we've talked about in these first few slides, I think are very important to the overall what we're trying to do on these forums to make you think as leaders and not to get into the hard tactics of leadership so much as what one would consider the softer side of leadership discussion. But we believe, you and I on this call, and I'm sure the folks listening and believe too, these are most important, even when you add them into the tactical aspects of being a leader.
Very true, Angie. Thank you for adding that last little piece there. Let's take a look at servant leadership because we talked about visionary leadership and we've heard from people about being a servant leader, being that person that is there to serve the people and the focus is on your customers and on your representatives and so on. Yet sometimes people think the word servant means that we need to be subservient and it gets confused. So what does servant leadership mean to you, Angie?
I have been accused, Nikki, of being a servant leader. It is something that I'm very proud of, as a matter of fact, because I do consider my leadership style back in the day to be one of serving first, meeting the needs of my constituents first, and not worrying about accumulating power and other things that come along with senior leadership roles. Look, we all live it. We all know that when we grow in our careers, things get a little bit better as we head up the ladder. But one of the things to me, servant leadership is all about. It's about serving. It's about making sure that no matter how high on that ladder you go, you better understand that you didn't get to that level up on the ladder without many, many people who have helped support you. And to me, I always felt it was important to serve those people, whether they be the custodians in any facility, whether they be the dock loaders in a facility, or whether they be your representatives. I mean, Nikki, a long answer to a short question of what it means to me, but it means being a leader who serves first and understands that you are not a leader unless you have folks following you. And to
Mhm.
me, serving those folks is the better way for a leader, at least in my vision of leadership. And so that's my answer to that question. I hope that made a little bit of sense as I was going through it.
That does, and I saw this modeled firsthand. A very large network marketing company in America um, had an office and that I went to, and I visited that CEO of that company who has since retired, and he was a wonderful man. But how I got the idea of his servant leadership, they have a lunchroom in this office area, and he took me through that building. And as we were walking through the building, he called every one of those employees, whether they were removing the garbage, whether they were in the kitchen behind the counter, he called every single person by name. And he made comments about, how's your daughter doing? I heard she was sick. And I mean, there's hundreds of people in this building. but I saw his connection with the people. He truly cared about his internal team. And there were a couple of Salesforce that were coming into the building. He recognized them and said something to them. And there's thousands of people in the organization. What I thought is this is a man who cares about others. He is others focused, not focused only on him, his agenda, how important he is, what he wants. I'm in a hurry, spit it out what you want, let's move on. That's not what it was at all. I gained tremendous respect for that leader, and I can say he truly was a servant leader.
And stay on that last point that you made about the respect that you gained for that person as a leader. I have seen men and women in leadership roles do exactly the same thing. And as long as it is who they are and it's not a show, okay, my calendar says go out on the floor for the next 5 minutes and say hello to everybody. That's not what being a servant leader is. You live this every day. To your point, when you walk in the building, how do you greet the receptionist who's at the, do you take time to stop, put your bag down, have a conversation with her or with him about their family? How do you later on, when things get tough and you are having the most horrible day you can imagine, rely on your people to be the one that gets you back on track and focused in on the things that need to do? A lot of times we all want to lock ourselves in our office and scream and yell a little bit when things aren't going well. And sometimes that's good. But servant leaders very quickly get to the point that it is their people who are there serving who is going to help them through difficult times. And your example of the leader you saw, that's a perfect example of someone who probably has in their calendar things like not just 5 minutes, but plenty of time out on the floor. And to the folks on the phone who are in high levels of leadership, think back to your early days when you were growing and how you thought about the leaders that you were trying to aspire to emulate. Were they servant leaders? My guess is if you held them in high regard, they were. And if you don't hold leaders you have been under in high regard, my guess is that they were a whole lot more interested in accumulating power and advancing their careers than they were in serving first and meeting the needs of all of their people. These are great points, Nikki, that it's an evolving concept, servant leadership, but it is one, especially in our relationship-based business, in direct selling, multi-level, that's most important for people to see you as a servant leader, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. And it's interesting that sometimes people move up through the ranks and all of a sudden they think they've arrived and in high level positions. Who got you there? Don't forget the people who got you there along the way. That's an important part of developing other leaders. And that leads us to be a leader and a team player. So that really means being engaged with your team. It's not us and them. It's we. And how do we keep that we in front? How do you stay connected with your internal team as well as your external? How does your team know you really are a team player? Tell us how you did that, Angie.
Well, I've watched other people do it, and no differently than the folks on the call who are in senior executive roles. Every one of us has been mentored by folks that we aspired to be like, and we also chose some examples of folks that we did not want to be like. And we built that all into who we are as leaders. But Nikki, this slide is here for a reason, because right out of servant leadership, and you said the words, servant leaders are team players also. They have the innate ability, and maybe not just innate, maybe it's developed over time also, but they have the ability to be both a leader and a team player at the same time. How does that look when you are out there? Well, examples that I would use are, if you're a leader, do you still get out there in direct selling and recruit with your people? How often does the president of a company, the CEO, whatever, guaranteed you show up in the field and do a little recruiting with your independent contractors out there in the field? Your stock is going to raise so much in that company. That's what servant leadership and being a team player, that's one example of it. Do you go out in your facility and jump in a trailer there on the outbound dock and throw a few place gently a few boxes of products for the independent contractor in the truck? I will tell you, Nikki, that those are the kinds of things, being a team player and a leader together, are most important. The other point I'd make also, that as leaders, and in the subset of servant leadership, kind of alluded to it earlier, both of us did, listen to your people, because that's the best way for you to be viewed as not just a leader of people, but somebody who listens to, understands, and reacts as much as possible to what they are hearing from the different levels of the organization. I will tell you that many leaders that in this industry really execute against this header very well. They understand that being a leader, but also a team player in this relationship-based business, is really what gets them ahead.
Uh, so true, and there's a lot of opportunity to model that in this profession. Investing in yourself and others. I've got to say, for every executive on this line, every corporate employee, team member, the only way we can grow is by growing as we're going. So it means investing in yourself along the way, developing new skills, taking on new knowledge and wisdom. You took the time to be on this executive forum. You took the time to learn what else is going on out there. How can the DSWA support us? What can I learn today? That's a great self coaching question. What can I learn today that I can implement into my life? You become a student. Doesn't matter where you are, how much money you're making, how far you've come, there's always room to grow. Angie, I know you always believed in that and continue to believe in that as you go to everything that we do and participate and continue to learn and grow so that you can share more and give back. But tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, Nikki, I'm smiling as you say it. I want to tell the folks who are listening in, this isn't a paid commercial in the middle of the executive forum. It's not. You should understand that Nikki and I are both passionate about this need for you to invest in yourself, not just yourself, but also others in your organization. Let me give you a couple of practical examples. I, have been in organizations before and watched organizations who really invested in the development and training of the individuals in their downlines. They also invested in the training and development of themselves as leaders. And whether it's with seminars, whether it's some of the offerings of the DSWA, whether it's going to industry conventions where you're listening to other experts, taking copious notes, going to chat sessions, understanding that this business continues to evolve and you as a leader need to evolve. Those are some practical examples. I would also tell you on the downside, too many times, leaders in top positions make a decision when the budget gets tight. We're going to stay away from some of the training. We can do without it for a little bit. A dangerous thing to do, Nikki, as you know, because what happens then is it's rare that you get back to that. And all of a sudden you have gaps of 1, 2, 3 years where you haven't been investing in the development of either yourself or others. And you all of a sudden see some gaps in that development, a very dangerous position to be in. So we emphasize this investment in yourself and others because that's the way you keep a vibrant organization growing. You keep building on skill sets that you want to enhance and develop. And ultimately, you don't have those gaps in development that we see all too often, and then the ultimate scramble to get back into things.
And that is, you're right. People get away. That budget that's cut, they cut the training budget. And training is one of the most important things for your corporate team, for your field team. But yet, many times, what that's about is there's a fear. If I have my corporate people be around other corporate people, they're going to get enticed to come move over here to this company. The way I look at that is this: you do a good job with your field, with your corporate team. You make them feel part of the community. You have a strong culture. They are loyal to you no matter what. It's just like the field. People think, oh, I put my field in with other people, they're going to get recruited. Not if you've done your job. You've done your
Absolutely
job
right.
from the top down corporately. as well as entrenching a desire to be a part of the community. So that's my strong belief on that one as we move forward to know when you need support, when you, as the corporate entity, the executive, the person needs support, or the company as a whole needs support from outside.
Yeah, again, these are all subsets of this concept of being an executive leader. And I can tell you that I wasn't always good at this, making sure that I had a perspective of others in my early days. But I would tell you that the more I grew in executive roles, one of the things, and it may sound like, boy, you are a glutton for punishment, but inevitably I would always look for feedback, both from my people, from my mentors, and also from folks that I respected who were in the industry but outside of the company I might be with. I was looking for that feedback because then I knew that maybe I needed a little bit more support. And where did I go for that support? Well, the work, it goes back to the previous slide. I had the opportunity to have investments made in me, whether they were from my senior management or whether they were decisions I made to invest in myself. But I would just offer, look ahead. Don't just react to a given situation you're in. You have to anticipate when you're going to need some support. You already know what your derailers are. You should. And you know when things get tough how normally you're going to react. Do you need more support when those things happen? Can you get through it by yourself? But I would tell you that leaders who know when they need support are ahead of the game. They already have it in place. They already have that support structure maybe existing. And if you don't, I would just offer that it's time to build that because no matter how your business is going now, there will always be difficult times. But knowing when you can dip into that support structure and get the help you need, I always found that to be very important, Nikki. And the support, by the way, can be your family also. Let's not lose sight of the fact that for many of us in the roles we have, having the support of our family is many times the most important thing that you need. And knowing when you need that support of your family, I think is important too.
It's a key component because if your family doesn't even know what's going on, the office or your job or your position is separated from your family, and they're not part of knowing what's going on and seeing how they can support you. They're on the outside of your life and they don't like that. So you've got to find ways to engage your family in what you're doing so that they will step in and see this is our family business. This is what we're doing as a family so that you keep that support system at home. It's difficult when you lose that. And one other thing, this is a coaching term, and we teach this actually in the Coach Excellence School, how to ask for compassionate feedback. And by the way, compassionate feedback is very different than constructive criticism, and that's something another day we'll cover. But for right now, I'm going to say ask for it. Every time I do a speech or if I do a consulting agreement or I do a phone, I ask if there were one or two things that I could have done differently today that would have given you and your sales force, the company, a better result. What would that be? Listen to it again. There are one or two things I could have done differently today that would have given you, your company, and the sales force a better result. What would that be? Now I am prepared to receive that feedback and I take it as from service because that's how compassionate feedback is given with permission from a place of service. I gave them permission and they come to me in service and it is received in service. It's a good thing. I ask my own internal team, I ask external people, I look for people who can support me. And as you build your network, you will find people that will be just dead honest, truthful with you coming from a place of service so that you can receive it. So get those people in your life and know that they really care about you and want you to continue to grow in that area.
Yeah, Nikki, that's so important.
Mm.
And to your point, as a leader, I did always ask for that feedback, and it wasn't always from just my peer group. It was from different levels of the organization, always with the way, it's always a subset of servant leadership, always with the objective of understanding what was on their mind, how could I do better for them? And it's sometimes hard to do because all the time you don't want to hear exactly what's being said, But if without that kind of input, compassionately, and we all ask for compassionate feedback, but sometimes it's not given that way. I think that's the way you grow as a leader. But it's very, very important to ask for that, and then to be willing to act on what you receive.
You see, it's building our network of external advisors that have an outside in view. We all have blind spots. We all know we've got blind spots. Somebody can take a fresh perspective without knowing all the drama and the stuff behind the scenes. We can see something in a little different way with an outside view. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
It's a trap that leaders sometimes fall into, and I've been guilty of this also, especially in our industry. You get so much, you build a cocoon of your company around you, and you stay internally focused with everything because of the need to drive the numbers, because of the need to increase the KPI. And sometimes you lose sight of the fact you're not getting input from outside, from an objective standpoint, from people who might be able to help you see things a bit differently and help you through challenges inside. So that concept of get outside of the cocoon, a lot of us fall into that trap because of the daily demands of being a leader, that we don't seek those outside opinions. And again, I just, go back in my experience and I would just offer to people on the call, you can think of those times in your careers also where you had an aha moment when somebody you asked to come in and take a look at your business made a few comments, saw things a little bit differently. They could see the forest for the trees where perhaps you could not. I think those are things that are very, very important to leaders so that you're not just getting folks who are aligned with your vision, aligned with your culture, understanding your values. You certainly don't want to have people come in and go against those, but sometimes that viewpoint from outside can really give you a moment of expansive growth. I think that's very important, and I've seen it happen before. And I've also seen folks go in the cocoon, stay there for a long time, and sometimes have an adverse impact on the business.
I agree. And that's where also, you have your big formal advisory boards, but who are your personal advisors, people that are in your life that will be truthful to you and with you, people that will share what they see and are honest, not just tell you what they think you want to hear. So I'm a firm believer in those outside advisors and how that works. Let's take a look at it from a different perspective. We want to seek advice from all levels of the organization. This is sort of the inside out view. So how do you go about doing that, Angie?
Yeah, Nikki, we've kind of referenced this a few times in our previous discussions of topics, but this is the the place where you're going to get a lot of your advice. And again, I'll go back to my example as a leader at the top of the ladder. You better understand what the folks downstream from you are thinking and get their opinions and their advice. They'll very much appreciate the fact that you're even asking them for their opinion. The fact that you may not be able to do what they're asking, give somebody a $15 an hour raise. Okay, the person just is trying to get across the point that they're feeling their compensation is good on an in-house person. But great leaders always take the opportunity to get advice from all levels of their organization, knowing full well that they're buying into the values of the company. They understand the culture of the company, and they may have some great ideas. The simplest practical execution of this is the idea box. When not a lot of times it's online now, Nick, you don't even have to have that box where people drop something in. Many companies execute that expertly, and it's a perfect example of what this slide is indicating. There's a vibrant exchange of ideas from all levels of the organization. It is part of servant leadership also, but it also, for a leader, helps them really establish a connectivity with those different levels of the organization. And I would tell you that there are a lot of companies that, turn a cold shoulder to the kind of advice that they may benefit from. And I think you and I all know examples of that. And I would just say that having that connectivity with all levels of your organization, no matter how high on the ladder you are, is very, very important.
That's a very interesting thought here because, see, when I look at inside out, to me, the inside also includes the sales force. So the sales force, people put together advisory councils with the sales force. I would never call it that because they think that they're giving advice in on behalf of the whole field. And if you don't take their advice, then you're not listening to them. But if you call it a field council, and what that field council brings to the table is another perspective, and a perspective from how they see things. I just saw an email this week that a corporate person sent to me and just said, Nikki, I'm not quite sure what to do with this. And it was from a top leader and over 20 years experience. And the person said, you went forth and made this decision in a tank and did not consult people who have years of experience in the field in any manner before you made this huge decision that is having an impact on our income. What made you do that? And I thought, whoa. So here's the part of this. We've got to listen and then make the decision, not make decisions and then listen to the complaints afterwards. So that's part of being open to receiving thoughts and ideas because we maybe didn't consider it because we had a blind spot to that. So you and I both see that the same. I know, Angie.
Yeah, we do, Nikki. And for the folks on the call again, as we near the end of these slides, I hope you see the build on all of them because this last piece, we really were referencing that back in our opening slide on visionary leadership and establishing your priorities and living your values and your culture. All the things we're talking about now and each of the subsequent slides build on those concepts. And of course, we led into servant leadership. This one right here really puts an exclamation point on all of those first slides because really, to your point, it's almost insulting if you don't use the term operating in a tank. You operate in a tank, you are almost insulting the people in your organization because you are not valuing what's on their mind, what is important to them, and certainly in our business, what is important to their livelihoods as families also. So I think it's a huge mistake that some people make, a trap they fall into to live in that tank and not to seek advice from all levels of the organization.
And it doesn't mean you hear everything. You can hear it, but it doesn't mean you act on everything that's brought
Exactly.
to you. But that idea of listening, sometimes we listen, we call it in our coach school heart centered listening, because sometimes we listen in our head of how to defend the position, how to overcome the objection, and how to just get them to stop talking so we can tell them what we want them to know. And that does not work effectively. When you listen to someone that brings their thoughts, their ideas, goes out on a limb to share that with us, we've got to stop, be present, and listen, and watch the difference in how people feel honored and valued. Well, we're coming down to the final here. So, Angie, developing leaders on your corporate team, how do you do it?
Well, it's really a setup to a whole nother forum that I know you and I are going to be doing. But as it's all part of being executive leaders, this is one we end on because you just don't want to miss a beat on making sure that while you're doing all the other things we're talking about, that you're not taking the time under that invest in others to develop leaders on your corporate team. We all know what leaders out in the field look like. And really, we're talking here to those folks who are running businesses across all different functions. You have to make sure that your next marketing head, your next human resources head, your next finance head are being developed. And then when we get into our other forum, Nikki, and we're talking about whether you do that externally and internally, this slide we end with because as leaders and being the kind of visionary leaders that everybody on this call wants to be, this is an important one. You better be thinking about how you are developing leaders who you want to be following in your footsteps, aspiring to the kind of leader you are as a visionary, as a servant, and how you invest in them. That's what this slide's all about. And I know, again, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about this a whole lot more in a future forum. There are folks in this business who do this very, very well. And you almost see, Nikki, a conga line, if you will, of leaders who are being nurtured, developed in their junior roles up to their middle management roles, and they pop out at the end of that pipeline as a leader that you're saying, wow, we saw that happen right before our eyes. This is what a visionary leader does. First and foremost, develops leaders on their corporate team.
And I totally agree with that. And I'm going to add just a couple more thoughts. Investing in your team means education for them, ongoing opportunities to grow, networking with other key people in our profession so that they can stay on that cutting edge and be out there. But the other part of it is many times companies hire people who do not understand the direct selling profession. They don't understand the psyche of the field, how they think, how they operate. And that is a big part of investing and developing your corporate team is to give them an appreciation for the field, to give them tools to learn and to grow. You know, many of you may not be aware, but even in the on the DSWA website, there are thousands of calls on every subject related to the direct selling profession. There's opportunities to educate your people by being a part of our team. Just let them listen to some of those. You want them to continue to grow because that's what keeps their passion alive. That's what keeps their purpose alive. And they can't do it in a tank. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes when we only do our little things inside of our company, whether it be large or small, there may be blind spots that we all have collectively. So I'll tell you, as DSWA, our team goes outside to gain also because we have things inside, but I want them to see other ways and to learn from other people. So develop your leaders on your own team and create those opportunities for them to grow. So before we wrap up, Angie, do you have any last minute little thoughts that you would like to end with?
First of all, Nikki, thanks to everyone who has taken the time to invest in themselves and listen in on this. I had referenced earlier, and you kind of alluded to it also. If you're taking a few nuggets out of this, that's what we're intending for you to get. Also, if you understand that there are things that we as a DSWA can offer to you as an organization, if you want to do that, you can contact me or contact Nicki. We're both on dswa.org. You see my contact right in front of you there. But we are here to serve you and to make sure that you are becoming the leaders and expanding yourself as leaders from where you are today. I want to thank everybody, Nicki, because this has been fun. I hope we've gotten a few nuggets out there for everybody to take hold of.
Well, thank you so much, Angelo. And I'm going to say this to everybody. This is a key factor. Again, if you don't have that support system around you, we are happy to be that support system for you. Angelo is doing executive coaching, executive mentoring. He's doing internal temporary positions within companies, and we have other staff that are doing this where they can go in and really get things going and assist with hiring the right person for the seat on the bus, whether that is coming in and working with your corporate team and customer service or building your executive team together, bringing a coaching culture to your company. There are lots of different ways for us to work together. You know, we just want to be of support and of service to you as you grow your company. And that's pretty much what's next is decide how we can be of support to you, decide how you're going to create this culture that we've talked about today to be that leader of leaders within your organizations. Please connect with us through social media. There are lots of opportunities to learn new skills, to develop new thoughts, where we can make sure that you're up on the cutting edge to see what's happening in the direct selling world. We will see you at other events around the country. We also would love to come to one of your events as a speaker, trainer, coach. It's all part of what we do. So I want to just say again, thank you so much for being you. Thank you for being part of the DSWA. And thank you, Angelo, for bringing your world of knowledge and wisdom. It was my great joy to have the experience to work with you when you were in your executive position and honored to have you be part of the DSWA family. Thank you, everyone, for your
Yeah, thanks,
time.
everyone.
And take care. Have a blessed day.